Let me tell you about the day that almost broke Steve Harvey. Not broke as in sad, not broke as in emotional. I mean broke as in the kind of moment where everything you've built, your reputation, your name, your legacy, flashes before your eyes in less than 60 seconds. And it all started with one woman who thought she was funnier than Steve Harvey. She wasn't. The year was 2016. Family Feud was at the absolute height of its popularity. Steve Harvey had transformed a game show that most people thought was done, finished, into the highest-rated daytime show on television. 50 million people were watching every single week. Think about that number. 50 million. That's more people than live in California and Texas combined, tuning in every week, just to watch this one man do what he does. And what does he do? He connects with people. He makes them feel seen. He turns ordinary families into television gold. He has this gift, this rare, unbelievable gift, where he can look at a complete stranger and within 30 seconds make them feel like they've known each other for years. But gifts can be tested. And on this particular Tuesday afternoon, a woman named Denise walked onto that stage, and within 90 seconds, she would test everything Steve Harvey had. Denise came in with her family, 3 sisters, a brother-in-law, and her mother, a small, quiet woman with gray hair and a smile that barely reached her eyes. From the moment they walked out, you could see the dynamic. Denise was the talker. Denise was the one in charge. Her family walked slightly behind her, like planets orbiting a sun. She was loud, she was confident, and she had clearly spent the entire car ride deciding she was going to be the star of this episode. Steve greeted them the way he greets everyone. Warm, genuine, he walked down the line, learned their names, asked a little about each of them. He got to the mother, her name was Gloria, and he spent an extra moment with her. Because Steve Harvey always spends extra time with the mothers, he was raised by a strong mother. He understands something about what it means to carry a family. He asked Gloria what she was most proud of. She smiled that quiet smile and said, "My children." Simple, real, the audience felt it. Steve nodded. He put his hand briefly on her arm. "You did good," he said. And that should have been a beautiful little moment. But Denise stepped forward. "She did okay," Denise said with a laugh. "I mean, some of us turned out better than others." The audience laughed a little. Steve laughed too. Because that's the job. You laugh. You keep the energy moving. You don't let anything land wrong on live television. But something in Steve's eyes shifted. Just barely. Just for a second. He noticed Gloria's smile go tight. The game started. Denise was answering for her family, standing at the podium across from the other family's contestant. And she was good. She was fast. She knew how to play. She got 3 answers in a row. Her family was cheering, and she was feeding off the energy. And then Steve walked over to her for the steal or pass moment, and he leaned in slightly and said something to her, something quiet, something meant only for her, and she leaned back and laughed. Then she looked at the camera, and she said, loud enough for the whole studio to hear, "Steve, baby, you're not as tall as you look on TV." The audience erupted. People laughed. A few people went, "Ooh." Steve Harvey smiled. He stepped back slightly. He looked down at his shoes. He looked back up. And the audience leaned in, because they all knew that this was the moment. You do not poke Steve Harvey and walk away clean. But what came next, nobody expected. Steve didn't fire back. He didn't do the thing everyone expected him to do. He paused. He turned to the audience, and in a voice that was softer than anything you'd expect from a man his size, a voice that was almost quiet, He said, "You know what? I've been called short my whole career. I've been called country. I've been called too much, too loud, too black for some rooms, not black enough for others. Too big, too old." The audience went silent. "I built this." He gestured around the studio, "not because everything went perfect. I built this because every single time somebody told me what I couldn't do, I went and did it anyway." He looked back at Denise. "So I appreciate the joke. I really do. But I want to tell you something, and I want your mama to hear this too." He looked directly at Gloria, who was standing off to the side, hands folded. "The people in this world who try to make other people feel small, they're usually the ones who feel the smallest inside. And I don't say that to be mean. I say it because I used to be that person. And it cost me. It cost me a lot." Nobody moved. The studio was so quiet you could hear the stage lights humming. "Your mama said she was proud of all her children. All of them. Equally, that's not a small thing. That's everything. And here is the part that nobody who was in that studio that day will ever forget. Gloria, the quiet woman with the gray hair and the tight smile, she started crying. Not sobbing, not dramatically, just tears rolling down her face, one at a time, like she'd been holding something for years and it had finally been given permission to leave. Denise saw it, and Denise's face, her confident, performing, in-charge face, collapsed. She turned to her mother and said, "Mama, I'm sorry." And Gloria shook her head and said, "Baby, I know." And Steve Harvey stood there in the middle of it all, saying nothing, because there was nothing left to say. Now here's the thing they don't tell you about television. The producers were in the booth watching all of this unfold on monitors, and every single one of them was waiting. Because what had just happened, that pause, that speech, that moment between a mother and a daughter, that was not in any runbook, that was not scripted, that was not planned, that was real life walking onto a game show set. And the question in the booth was, do we use this? Do we air this? Is this too much? Have we crossed a line? The executive producer, a woman who had worked in television for over 20 years, picked up the phone, called the edit bay, said 4 words, "Don't touch a frame." The episode aired 3 weeks later. And within 48 hours, it had become one of the most talked about episodes of Family Feud in television history. Not because of the joke, not because of the comeback, but because of the moment between Gloria and Denise. Because millions of people watching at home saw themselves in those 2 women, saw their own family dynamics, saw the thing that goes unsaid for years between parents and children, saw the quiet hurt that accumulates over decades of small moments. And they saw a man, a television host, a comedian, a showman, choose a real moment over an easy laugh. But here's the part that the headlines didn't capture. After the episode aired, Steve Harvey received a letter, handwritten 3 pages, from Gloria. She wrote about her daughter, about how Denise had always been the fighter in the family, the one who pushed back against the world because the world had pushed back against her first. She wrote about how she'd always known her daughter loved her, even when it didn't look like it. And she wrote about how, in 30 years of motherhood, nobody had ever said to her daughter the thing that Steve Harvey said. That the people who try to make others feel small are usually the ones who feel smallest inside. She wrote, "My daughter called me that night. She cried for 2 hours. She told me things she'd never told me before. I want you to know, that conversation healed something in our family that I had given up on healing." Steve Harvey has kept that letter. He has talked about it publicly, more than once, as one of the most important pieces of correspondence he has ever received. Not an award, not a ratings report. A handwritten letter from a grandmother in the Midwest, thanking him for telling her daughter the truth on live television. Now, about the headline. About the ended his career part. Here's the truth about that. When the moment happened, when Steve Harvey stopped the game and gave that speech, there were exactly 47 seconds of dead air. No jokes, no audience response, no game show energy, just a man talking to a woman about something real. In television, 47 seconds of silence is an eternity. The kind of silence that makes producers reach for antacids. And in that 47 seconds, several media commentators who were monitoring the broadcast live actually started writing the narrative in real time. The narrative was, Steve Harvey went off script. Steve Harvey got emotional. Steve Harvey lost control of the show. By the time the episode aired, there were opinion pieces already drafted. Pieces suggesting that Harvey was losing his edge, that the incident showed he was getting too serious for daytime TV, that audiences wanted laughs, not lectures. One headline actually read, "Has Steve Harvey lost his touch?" The piece was published on a Monday. By Wednesday, it had been buried under an avalanche of viewer responses, tens of thousands of comments, messages, social media posts, all saying the same thing. That this was the best moment in Family Feud history. That Steve Harvey hadn't lost his touch. He'd found something deeper. Now let's talk about something most people never discuss. The version of Steve Harvey that existed before all of this. Before Family Feud. Before the suits and the mustache and the 50 million viewers. Steve Harvey grew up in Glenville, a neighborhood on the east side of Cleveland, Ohio. His father worked in coal mines. His mother was a woman of faith and fire, someone who believed deeply and without apology that her son was going to be somebody. And she told him so, repeatedly, in the face of every obstacle. And there were obstacles. Harvey was homeless for 3 years early in his career, living out of his Ford Tempo, bathing in gas station bathrooms, eating whatever he could afford, going to comedy clubs and bombing on stage, and coming back the next night and bombing again and coming back the night after that, because his mother told him he was going to be somebody. And you don't let down the woman who believed in you when the world wasn't sure yet. That's where the thing with mothers comes from. That's why Steve Harvey always pauses for the mothers. Because every mother in that audience is someone's reason to keep going. And he knows what that feels like from the inside. So when Denise made that comment about Gloria, when she said she did okay while Gloria was standing right there, Steve felt something that went deeper than a joke. He felt a recognition of the kind of small, careless wound that family members can inflict on each other without even fully realizing they're doing it. And he didn't let it pass. He did something that television hosts almost never do. He told the truth. He made himself vulnerable in the service of someone else's truth. He used the platform, the lights, the cameras, the 50 million people watching, not for a laugh, but for a moment. And maybe that's the real story here. Not the joke, not the silence, not the speech. The real story is this. There is a version of Steve Harvey that was supposed to play it safe. Keep it light. Fire back with a witty line and get the audience back on his side. That's the formula. That's what the format demands. He didn't do that. He did something harder. He told the truth. And the truth, the quiet, uncomfortable, real truth about families and hurt and pride and what it means to make other people small. That truth landed differently than any punchline could have. The woman who mocked Steve Harvey live on air thought she was ending him. She didn't end him. She accidentally gave him the greatest moment of his career. And somewhere in the Midwest, a mother and daughter are still having conversations that started that day. Conversations about the things we don't say, about the hurt we carry, about what it means to be loved by someone who doesn't always know how to show it. That's what 50 million viewers watched that day. Not a game show. A family. If you've ever sat across from someone you love and felt the weight of words you haven't said, if you've ever watched a parent's smile go tight and told yourself you'd address it later, this story is for you, because later isn't guaranteed. But right now is. Right now, the phone is in your hand. The message can be sent. The door can be opened. Steve Harvey didn't plan that moment. He just recognized it. And he chose truth over comfort. You can make the same choice today.